This is a Mishnah Torah part, right? Okay. Maybe you'll say that since Hashem knows everything that will be before it happens, so we have a choice. Either God knows a person will be righteous or not, or he doesn't know. If God knows he'll be righteous, then it's impossible for him not to be righteous. Maybe you'll say, God knows he'll be a tzaddik, even though it's possible that he'll decide to be a rasha. God doesn't actually know. If he knows, but it could change, and that's not actually knowledge. My son always has predictions about the stock market. I said, I'm telling you it's good to go down, you should sell, right? So whenever he's right, he tells me I have to see, I told you so, but he forgets about all the times he was wrong. The answer to this question is very, very long. And many essential matters are dependent on it. So I can't get into the whole answer, but here's the essence of what I want to say. God's knowledge is different fundamentally from our knowledge. I am myself, and then if I learn something, now I know that, right? Sometimes I forget it. So us and our knowledge are separate matters, right? We can acquire knowledge, we can share knowledge, but for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his essence and his knowledge are one and the same thing. In other words, God's essence is knowledge. It's not like he has a body with a brain that can learn things. He is the knowledge of truth itself. God is all the truth that there is ever to be possibly known in and of itself. And therefore, his knowledge is of a different quality altogether. ואין דעתו של אדם יכולה להשיג. דבר זה על בוריו. It's not possible for us to understand. שאין כל באדם להשיג ולמצוא מיתת הבורא שנאמר, כי לא יראני האדם בחייס, just like we cannot know God's truth, כך אין אדם חוך באדם למצוא דעתו של בורא, we can't know God's knowledge. And that's what Yeshaya says, כי לא מחשבותיי, מחשבותיכם ולא דרככם דרכי. Your ways are not our ways. Hashem's knowledge is not our knowledge. וכיוון שכן הוא, אין בנו כוח לדע האח ידע הקדוש ברוך הוא כל הבירואים והמעשים, אבל נדע בלא ספק שמעשה האדם ביד האדם. So even though we can't know God, nevertheless we know for sure, without a doubt, that the actions of a person are within our own hands, and God does not pull a person and does not decree upon him to do this or that. So we have absolute free will. Now, why is Rambam saying this? Why is he so sure? Not only because of our tradition, of our religion, that surely is a good reason. If the Nevi'im all come and say, do this, don't do that, or else, if God commands us to do anything, obviously it's in our will, right? I give you a choice today between Chaim and Ma'at. But not only because of that, by philosophy, I can also prove it scientifically, philosophy. From any angle, this is true that we have free will. And that's why the Nevi'im say that we judge a person on their actions, if they're good, if they're bad, and all of prophecy depends on this. That's what Rambam says. So it brings up the question, is his answer satisfactory? Sam likes it.
He doesn't tell us if
says yes.
He says we have free will, but he doesn't answer the God question about knowledge.
It does. He says you can't understand it.
His answer is we can't understand it.
That's not an answer. That's a evasive answer.
Okay.
What's the alternative?
His answer is that. Can I move this? Victoria, do you know? If I X this, we'll X the whole thing. No, I want only resources. Oh, see, it didn't work. Okay. So he says we don't know, but it's not just that. And I don't know the answer. It's that we can't know. He proved that we cannot possibly understand the answer, but there is an answer. Now, there's the famous Ravad. He's Ashkenazi, contemporary of Rambam, and if you see the printed Rambam, every few lines, Ravad has a hasaga, a gloss, in which he argues with Rambam. And I always laugh when I see this in the printed edition, because Rambam wrote his Mishnah Torah to be the book to end all books. Right? Once you have my book, you don't need to learn Talmud anymore, nothing else. I gave you the bottom line, right? It's absolute. I figured it all out for you. So you can just learn the halacha here, and then you can go spend the rest of your time studying philosophy. And yet, in the official printed edition, he's printed with everybody who argues on him. All right. So if he was around to see that printed edition, I don't think he'd be so happy. But it does show how important Rambam was and his influence that everybody, even whether they agreed or disagreed, right, had to deal with him. And so here, Avraham, Lo nahag zeh mechaber minhag chachamim. This author has not written the way wise people do. He's writing about Rambam. You don't start something if you can't finish it. He opened with a question and he left it with a question, and he left it with faith. Oh, you have to believe that we have free will, even though we can't understand it. And it would have been better to leave it in your innocence before he asked the question. Nobody was thinking about this, so just leave it without asking the question in the first place. And don't awaken people's minds to the problem. And then you're going to leave them with doubt. And then one day they're going to say, oh, remember that thing? It really bothers me. I have no answer to it. Right? Forget it. I'm out of here. Even though there's no answer, I'll try to give an answer. And Rabbi tries to give his own answer. We can read that. Okay, he has a short answer? It's not so short. Okay, so we'll leave that for another time. Right? But basically, we don't know. It's different. I like this machloket between the Rambam and the Abad because it gets at the essence of our education and our approach. People always say, how come in high school they didn't teach us this and that? And it's like, well, it's really difficult because do you want to bring up every possible problem that there is to a high school student? If they're not thinking about it themselves, then they might not going to be interested in learning about it, and you only might make things worse. Sometimes you have to be ready in life. I was reading about an author who was very difficult to read, and someone was saying you have to be ready in life, about 40 years old, 50 years old, right? Sometimes some things you can't appreciate. You don't have the question, then don't bother with the answer. And I think that's why we don't bring up a lot of things. Also, sometimes the teachers don't have the answer because nobody has the answer, and what's the point of bringing it up? On the other hand, I think Rambam does bring it up because, well, maybe a lot of people do have the question, and maybe bringing it up can help us think deeper about it. And by thinking deeper, we can actually elevate our understanding, our knowledge of the limits of our knowledge. Even that is an important thing to know, right? What we can, what we cannot know. All right. So I appreciate this controversy, and let's turn to Rabbi Sachs, who was asked this very question and in a lecture. And let's see what he says about it. Okay. So that's here, and this is 2 minutes.
Bashevis singer said, "We must have free will. We have no choice." The truth is, this is quite a complex question. But if I can make it as simple as possible, you're Italian. Do you watch soccer? Yeah? So I want you to imagine this. You go to a soccer match. Your team is playing whoever they're playing. They're playing, I don't know, Barcelona in the European Cup. And you are on the edge of your seat for 90 minutes. You don't know what's going to happen next. You're excited, you're thrilled. Then you come back home and you watch that same match on television. Now you know exactly what's going to happen. How that center forward is going to miss that open goal. How the other team is going to get that penalty. You know exactly what is happening. But this doesn't mean that the players between then and the television program lost their free will. What it means is that when you're watching the match on television, you are in a different time zone than the players on the field. Hashem lives in a different time zone from us because he lives outside the universe and outside time. And therefore, he is able to see all times, past, present, and future. as we could see if we, if we fast forwarded the memory on our computer. He's living in a different time zone. And that is why we are free, but God nonetheless knows the whole story, beginning, middle, and end, and that is a very complex thing because we really can only properly understand from one time zone.
Click subscribe to see more exclusive content for the most.
Okay, so what do you think about his answer? All right, it gives a contemporary analogy that actually makes sense. And so sometimes modern technology and the things that we see now and the way that we absorb knowledge can actually help us understand things that we cannot understand and why we cannot understand them, right? But that makes sense that the players have free will, even though it happened already, but you're watching it you're watching the rerun. Okay, so let's leave that topic. And let's go to the more complex one, which is regarding providence itself, and what are some of the different views about that. So I put together here 6 views. This is a chapter that those of us who are studying with the Nevuchim are currently finishing this very chapter. It's the central chapter where Rambam talks about providence, and he presents 6 different views about providence in the world. He doesn't agree with all of them. He doesn't agree with most of them. But this is Rambam's methodology. He always likes to bring all the different opinions. You can see the benefits of each one, what's wrong with each one. And sometimes he agrees partially with one and partially with another. So I put them in my own order. This is not the order that he presents it in. This is part 3, chapter 17. And so I'll summarize the 6 different views, and we'll think about it together. And then we'll look at a little bit what Rabbi Sachs writes about this, and we can end off with another video clip. Okay, the first view is that of Epicurus, also known as... Okay, I will try. How do I get the hand thing? All right, it's on a... Okay, I can scroll it. Okay, here we go. Is that good?
Yeah.
Bigger?
Perfect.
It's too big. Okay. Epicurus, also known as Apikodes, he is one of the only philosophers ever mentioned by Chazal, right? And not in a positive way. Epicurus says that everything is random in the world, and there is no providence. He doesn't think that God is involved in the world. Therefore, we do have free will. Human beings have free will. But our free will to do something good or bad has no consequences because there's nobody watching. Okay, that's Epicurus. It's not actually what Epicurus writes in his own writings, but this is the way he was portrayed by other philosophers. And so the rabbis are quoting what other philosophers say about him, but whether he said it or not, this is a theoretical view. And you might even say this is probably the majority scientific view today, right? Most scientists think that things are random in the world and there's nobody watching. And so, it's good to do good just because we don't want to live in a society where everybody's stealing and all. But this is still a popular view. All right, amazingly, Epicurus said that atoms have a way of randomly deciding to veer off this way or that way. They don't always do what they're told. And that kind of foreshadows quantum theory. That's really interesting. Okay, so that's Epicurus, and Rambam says, yes, we have nothing to deal with him, right? He obviously is totally wrong. And then we get to Aristotle, and Rambam generally likes Aristotle. He quibbles with some things. Aristotle says there's general providence on earth, there is providence up in heaven. By providence, Aristotle kind of redefines the term. He says providence means what God had, that which is set in motion. If you look at the planets and the stars and the sun, they go in a regular pattern by nature, built into nature. And what's the moving force? What keeps them moving? Why don't they stop? Well, they didn't know about Newton, right? That F equals ma. So what's pushing them, keeping them going? That is God's providence. So that's up in heaven where there is providence. Everything goes the way it was set, predictably. Whereas down on earth, there is only general providence. General providence means for a species. The species of zebras, they're always going to be around, hopefully, because zebras know how to live, they know how to find food, They know how to escape danger. Every species of animals and birds and fish and insects and amoebas, everyone has this general providence. They know how to survive. So it doesn't mean that God is individually directing each amoeba, you better get out of here, there's danger, but rather it's built into nature, built into DNA, and that's a general providence for a species, although not for each individual, right? An individual lamb might very well get caught by a lion, and that's going to be the end of it. So that's general providence for things on earth, for species, kind of built in. And according to Aristotle, for humans is the same as animals. Humans also die and sometimes get sick, and sometimes all kinds of random things happen. As a species, we can survive, and even better than most, because we have brains and we can figure out problems and solutions and cures. But otherwise, it's a general providence that means built into nature. So that's how Aristotle defines providence. Do you like that definition of providence? Not bad.
There's no involvement. That's like
There's no direct involvement, right? It's like, I don't know, you teach your kids right and wrong, and then you send them to wherever, and right, they hopefully have your teachings in their minds, and when they make good decisions.
It's impersonal.
It's impersonal. That's right. Right. Aristotle's God is a philosophical principle, not a personality.
We can't relate to, and nobody can relate to that such a being. We don't have any desire to relate to.
Right. It'd be hard to relate to such a being. That's Aristotle. And then I'm going to skip to the other extremes before we get to Torah and Rambam. And the other side is the Mutazilites. This is a group of Muslim philosophers. Muslims back then were at the cutting edge of religion and philosophy, putting them together. They had their yeshiva universities. I don't know. I don't think there's any yeshiva university versions of in Islam today. Maybe there are some. I don't know.
It was in Fez. There was a famous university in Fez.
There was. Right.
Cairo was.
Yeah, but are they doing this? Are they cutting? Are they interpreting the Quran and all of their religion, in a way that will be make sense for a modern mind? I don't know. I don't think they're doing that. Okay, so the Mutazilites say everything is there's all providence, God is involved in everything. They also think there is free will. How do they reconcile it? They don't really say. But because everything is providential, there is total reward and punishment. According to the Mutazilites, God controls. People have free will, and there is absolute reward and punishment. So anything that anyone does something good, they get something good. Anyone does something bad, they get something bad. If you see something bad happen to someone, they must have deserved it. This is true not only for humans, but the Mutazilites say also for animals. If a leaf falls from a tree and falls on an ant and smashes the ant, don't worry, the ant died young, but it will go to ant heaven. Right? The Mutazilites say, right? If a fox kills a lamb, don't worry. A wolf kills a lamb, don't worry. The wolf will go to wolf heaven, even though it had a short life. Right? That's what they say. And the lamb will go. Yeah, the fox will go to the other place for doing such a bad deed. And certainly for human beings, every little good or bad thing is justified sometime in the afterlife. So there is no problem of evil. Everything is providential. Everything that happens, everything will be sorted out.
It's just.
Everything is just.
It's just because of the afterlife.
Right, exactly. Okay, the Asherites, another group of Muslims, say everything is providential and everything is God's will based on his foreknowledge, and they say there's no human free will. So right back to the video clip we just saw, the discussion we just saw, they say, no, there is God, since God knows everything and controls everything, we are all puppets. We're just robots doing whatever God said. I think that's probably why Rambam had to write all that, right? Maybe in his environment, people were influenced. Asherites was the official Muslim doctrine. And so probably a lot of his readers who did think that, maybe that's why he had to write it. Maybe the Avad, in living in Ashkenaz, they weren't so influenced. So he said, don't bring it up. No one cares about the question in the first place. Okay, and they also think that there's no reward and punishment because no one deserves reward for doing something good because God made them do it. And no one deserves punishment for doing something evil because God forced them to do it. And so there is suffering. Some people have a better life and a worse life. Some people are rich or poor or sick, but that's because God willed it. Right? God just decided, kind of, based on his will, as his whim, whatever he felt like, to give this person something good, something bad. So there is injustice in the world, and there is suffering without reason, but there's nothing you can do about it anyway. So just, roll with it. Okay, that's the Asherites. Do you like any of these? I think it's interesting that there's Rambam does, well, he kind of points this out at the end, that there is a parallel between the extremes. The extreme that says there's no providence at all, God is not involved, and the other extreme that says God is involved in every little thing and micromanages. What they have in common is they both don't think there's any reward and punishment, right? Either because God's not involved, so he's not going to reward, or because God is super involved and you can't make any of your own decisions. So ironically, right, the two extremes actually and are problematic for the same reason. Aristotle and the Mutazilites, they are also different, but they agree that animals and humans are treated the same way. Whereas for Aristotle, humans and animals have general providence, but not individual providence. They'll survive by their instincts. The Mutazilites say that there is, but Aristotle will say there is injustice, because it might just happen that this individual a bug or animal or person will suffer, but that's just the way it is. God is not involved in that person's individual life. Mutazilites also say humans are the same as animals, because there is justice equally for all of them. Okay, where does that leave us? Rambam first presents the view of the Torah and then his own, which is always weird to read because you think the view of the Torah should be his own. But what he means is this is the way most people interpret the Torah. But he's focusing mostly on Tanakh and giving his own view. So the Torah view is that there is providence and free will, and somehow you should put them together. And there is reward and punishment for humans only. This is nowhere in the Torah do you find that Hashem is concerned about the afterlife, or it doesn't mention afterlife for humans either. But nowhere is this concern about justice or good and bad for animals. Nachash, that's true. Nachash does something wrong and gets punished.
Also, you also have the animals, according to the rabbis. Yishchit kol basar, so the rabbis say that the animals sinned as well,
right? Which
may be their attempt to justify,
right?
The fact that the animals were also killed in the flood.
Good, right? And then animals are also repenting and wearing sackcloth.
Yeah, but again, that's it's none of the Torah. Just
right.
It shows up in the rabbis.
Okay, so there are a couple of places here and there you can see something about animals, but Rambam just puts that on the side. It's speaking metaphorically, whatever it is. And so that's where the Torah lands, and Rambam is going to add something to that, which is that there is free will and there's general providence for all people, but in addition there is also individual providence, but only for some, only for those who are righteous, only for those who have reached a certain level of intellectual capability. So how does that work? Why should they get more providence than anybody else?
They earned it. It means they have less free will. So why is that better?
They seek a relationship.
They earned it.
They're closer to God.
They earned it as a reward.
It's a natural occurrence of their understanding and knowledge of God. That's sort of
good. So their understanding and knowledge of God and of truth will lead them to make sure not to put themselves in danger in the first place. They know the value of human life, and before they get on a boat, they're going to say, "Is this boat worthy? Or is this a boat 87 jumbo? Oh, maybe I shouldn't go on it." If they're going to a neighborhood, they're going to say, "Is it safe? Right? How can I deal safely?" So because they're on a higher level, and so their intellectual is better, maybe they'll be able to find a cure better. They'll avoid disease. They'll avoid staying in places. You're not going to live in a place that's prone to earthquakes. And through that, they have individual providence.
He specifically says those things that you just said? I don't think so. Yeah?
In the ship one, he said.
No, but the individual providence is based on their choices?
Yes.
Wow.
That because they're more connected, so there'll be this kind of flow It's he has used some language of prophecy.
But that doesn't follow because you could be be secularly educated and not religiously educated and make those same choices of not going on a boat and not doing dangerous things and not eating dangerous food.
Good. I think Rambam might say that even though the person is secularly educated, if he attains true things about the creation, about the world, then they still are truths. And Rambam would consider them the same as religious truths. I don't think he would distinguish between yeshiva and university, right? If it's true, it's true, no matter where it comes from. Okay, and so that's the way Rambam is putting it together, which is very interesting. Now, I want to show you.
Is there individual providence for punishment?
Is there individual providence for punishment?
Hitler is God.
Okay, great question. And Rambam would say no to that because he says, all right, we're getting a reward here. Good. Because he says that that a punishment would just be the absence of providence, leaving things to randomness. Hastarat panim. If there's nothing good that's keeping you going, then the randomness will take over, right? So something like a terrible war would just be when the forces of just that are keeping things good don't act. So it's really the negative. Okay, this is a very important principle. Rambam says there is no such thing as evil in the world. Why? Because anything bad is not a positive. It's just the absence of something good. For example, a darkness. Is there such thing as darkness? It's just the absence of light. There's such thing as coldness. It's just the absence of heat. If you take away heat from a system, then it's cold, right? But coldness does not actually exist. Now, if you're sitting in the cold and dark, you might feel suffering, right? But that's only because you have a lack of the good things. One second. And the same thing would be for disease, right? Health is when everything is balanced. And so if you have a lack of balance, a lack of nutrients, a lack of something, then a person will be, right? But it's just taking away life. Even death is just the absence of life. And so anything, you can't say that God creates or causes something bad. He may take away something good, or some force or a person might take away something good that you have. But even poverty is just a lack of wealth. Oh, you could be in debt though. Yeah. What?
You can spin it and say that natural state is bad. Darkness is natural state. I have to introduce light.
So then,
cold is natural state.
Good.
Introduce heat.
The natural state is zero, right?
Zero. So
anything that after that is positive.
Zero is negative. It's not good enough.
No, zero is just zero, right? If a person, so you can't live. So the fact that you'll live at all is a gift. So great, wonderful, I have a gift. And so at the end of your life, right? So is it bad that someone lived, however long they lived, and now they have to die? Well, it's not bad. It's good that they lived, however long they did. The analogy is, if I give you a Porsche to drive around for a week, right? So you're very happy. You're driving this fancy car for a week, and I say, okay, now that's it. It's up, right? The rental is up. So now you're all upset. How could you take it away? This is what I have. I need it, right? I'm relying on it. What a terrible thing that you're taking away what's mine. No, it was actually a gift, right? That you could use for a while. Now you give it up. So everything good that we have is a positive. If it ends, then it's just a lack of something positive.
I think it does speak about a third kind of evil, which is what people do to people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's not just a lack. It says some suffering comes because we're flesh and blood. That's just the nature of flesh and blood. And some suffering comes, which he thinks is the most, because people make foolish choices. And some suffering comes because people do harm to people.
Right. Okay, but even those harms are just taking away from someone something that they had.
I don't think that if one speaks to abuse victims, that would be what they would say. That comes across to me as a really difficult explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And now one that takes human reality into account.
Right.
I don't think any abuse victim would say, oh, they just took my innocence away. Now I don't have innocence, and be as nonchalant about it as I'm here with you.
Okay, I understand. And Rambam is, well, this is one response, but Rambam has other responses. And he talks about how even those bad things happen rarely, thankfully. Even though they're very bad, they happen rarely.
Clearly, he hasn't read the New York newspapers.
Okay. Well, I think that's the very point, that reading the news does not give you an actual balanced understanding of what happens in the world, right? When you read the news, you hear about all the terrible things that happen, and the murder, and the thing, and the mother killed her children, all that, and you think, oh, is this happening all the time? But statistically, the car accidents and the plane crashes and all that are relatively few, even though they're very bad. And so their picture is most people just have a good day, they go to work, they come back, they see their family, and they eat, and they're clothed, and everything is fine. Most people,
Everybody made it to work today.
Right, exactly.
Most people would say that you're living a very blessed life. If you think that.
Rambam would say most people are living a blessed life, especially even more nowadays than in his days. If he could say that back then, and it's also true now. Okay, let's turn to Rabbi Sachs in this essay, and I want to read the beginning, middle, and end, and we'll get a good sense of what he says. The problem of suffering, I hope you can see in the back, is the most acute of all dilemmas in the life of faith, and it's sometimes difficult to know whether religious belief makes it easier to understand or more intractable. There is a famous midrash about Abraham, and it gives an analogy. There was a man traveling from place to place, and he came upon a palace in flames. And the man asked, is it possible that the palace lacks someone to look after it? The owner of the palace looked at it and said, I'm the owner of the palace. So to Abraham, he looked out on the stars and he said, is it conceivable that the world lacks someone to look after it? And Hakadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm the owner of the world. Now, there's two ways to interpret this midrash. Professor Kugel once came here and gave one interpretation, that Abraham looked out at the stars and said, look at this palace, look how beautiful everything's, all lit up. They don't translate in flames. In the Hebrew, it's hard. It's a daluk, so which could mean that it's all lit up. Look at this beautiful palace. Is anybody living here? And the owner says, I'm living here, and that's how Abraham found God. Okay, that's one understanding of the midrash, right? Which is the learning the argument from design, and Kugel advocated for that understanding of the midrash based on other Second Temple sources that say something similar about Abraham. But Rabbi Sachs doesn't like that interpretation. He says, takes away the sting from what is surely a remarkable and profound metaphor, that the world is created, at least the world is created is the least important message of the element of the passage. Had he merely wanted seeing a palace, he would not have given it a second thought. What arrests Abraham's attention is the spectacle of the world on fire, meaning the suffering in the world. What the wrong of people flourish, the innocent suffer, injustice prevails, and there is no one to protest. Isn't there anybody doing anything about this? For someone who has no faith, this would not be a problem. The blind play of forces, the relentless rule of the strong over the weak, does not lead to the expectation of justice. But because Abraham does believe in God, he's caught in the contradiction. Is it possible that he who made the world has left it to moral chaos? God appears and declares that he is still resident in the universe. The solution, therefore, vanishes. God has not departed after the 7 days of creation to sit like a Greek philosophical deity above in ignorance of the fleeting suffering of his creature. And there the passage ends. No nearer solution. Two answers have been ruled out, that there is no God or that God is indifferent. So God says, I'm here. The suffering in the world, there's people suffering. God says, I'm here. But how does that answer the question? Why aren't you doing anything about it? This only intensifies the question, why are people suffering? The midrash contains an implicit answer, a radical one, which we will consider at the end of our analysis. So it's going to keep us in suspense till the end of the essay. Okay, ready? I'm not going to, let's go in the middle, and then we'll get to the end and see what is the answer to this. Okay, so he's going to go through various statements that I'll have said. In the middle, this is the middle part, he quotes our parasha, where Abraham is arguing with God about Sodom. And is based on the assumption that within the cities, there must be at least some righteous people. The real answer is given in the next chapter when we read about what happens in Lot's house. According to Rashbam, the purpose of including this detail is to establish that there were no innocent people. All right. I found it interesting when I'm reading this morning that the story of what happens in Lot's house comes after Abraham argued. You wonder if Abraham would argue if afterwards, if he knew what they did, right, at his nephew's house. So I think the next, so Rabbi Ashbam says that next scene brings home that point. Okay, what can we learn from this story? I'll read just a couple of the points. Number one is that however incomprehensible the nature of God is, and however true that as the heavens are higher than earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. That's the same pasuk that Rambam quoted in Mishneh Torah to say, our knowledge is not like God's knowledge, you can't know anything. Well, here Rabbi Sachs is quoting it. Nonetheless, the word justice means the same whether applied to man or to God. Justice is what God wishes Abraham to teach his children, and it is what Abraham in the same revelation asks of God. If divine justice is hard to understand, it's not because of any obscurity in the concept. So this is really essential, that we don't say, well, we cannot understand justice because for Hashem, justice is something fundamentally different from what we think of justice. That's true for knowledge. Our understanding of knowledge is different from God's knowledge. But justice has one definition for all, right? And therefore, Abraham or anyone can understand what you know in justice when you see it. And therefore, you can call out and say, this is unjust, no matter who does it. Right.
He's asking Hashem.
Right. Hashem recognizes that Abraham teaches justice, knows what it is, and therefore, and that's the second point, that is he is entitled, indeed invited, to ask questions about the justice of God. Shall I hide what I'm going to do? Okay, so we can learn from that, even if only that, it's significant that yes, it's appropriate to ask questions on this topic. Okay, so from there, Rabbi Sachs will go into a few other points. He talks about some solutions that the rabbis have given. He says maybe there's a difference in the sensibilities nowadays. Back then they thought of children as a person's property, all right, a father's property. And nowadays we know that we think of them as a separate being. And so maybe that's a difference in why do children suffer? Once upon a time, they might have been okay with that idea that children can suffer because of sins of the parents, but then at some point, no longer, because we have a different understanding. And then he talks about afterlife, and right that is an important concept in Chazal as well. And he finally quotes the view that we just don't know. Rabbi Meir says, right, we cannot know why things happen and why things don't. But there is Rambam's view, and so this is what he's going to quote, summarize now, and he gives a very nice summary of what Rambam says. And I hope after reading this, you'll want to study the Moreh Nevuchim inside, so that you can see what he says in a deeper way. Okay, a quite different view was taken by Maimonides, though his treatment of the problem of in the Guide of the Koppel is long and complex and subtle, so that we can only present a fragment of it, is far from what he has to say. At one point in the argument, he suspects of providence and justice. And in fact, he has to consider the problem in terms of human condition. Our sense of indignation in the presence of pain is often the product of one or other of three fallacies. We judge the universe from our subjective standpoint, as if the world has been made for us. Right.
No?
What?
Is that the response that Eob gets at the end?
Yeah, weren't you without creation? You think everything revolves around you? Right? So that certainly is.
I actually don't think that's response Eob gets at the end. That's just the beginning of God's response. The end of God's response is Shema Osin Shmaticha Ba'atai Nira'atcha. He sees God differently, so he sees everything differently. Mm-hmm. This was from Rabbi Eliezer Berkowitz of Blessed Memory.
Very nice. Right. Thank you. So if we're very self-centered, why is this, why are these animals out there? Why everything? Why is this mosquito? Well, it says everything's about you. And Mom actually goes and says, look how far Jupiter is. You know how long it would take to walk to Jupiter? Mom says 8,000 years. Actually, it's about 10,000 years. But it's pretty close. One Jupiter is the closest, right? It says, look how far you think everything's around you. Look at the universe out there. If Rambam only knew what we know now about the universe, he would have been emphasized the point even more. So it's only when we are so egocentric do we say, why me? Why has happened to me? We judge second, we ask for the logically impossible to have bodies and yet not to suffer. If you have a physical body, then anything physical is going to be bound to, if you hit it, if you break it, it's a subject to decay. And so you say, well, I want to have no suffering, no pain, no disease, but that's fine. But then you have to be a disembodied being, an angel or something like that. So if you want to be an angel, okay, you could, you can put in a petition for that. But, would you really then lose out? Then you'd lose out on all the positive things about being a human being. So it's kind of built in to human beings. It comes with the good, but also comes with the vulnerabilities. And the third is we blame God for what is in fact the fault of man. That will begin to address the Uzi's comment, right? It's true. People have free will and they can do terrible things to others, but God granting free will in itself is good, even though abuse that privilege. Okay, firstly, we often complain that we do not have what we desire. Our desire is not the measure of all things and may in fact be quite unwarranted. So you might complain because I can't pay off my credit card bill. Yeah, but what'd you buy in your credit card, right? You didn't have to buy every fancy dessert at Uri's like some people I know do. Secondly, we may protest at our ill health, forgetting that it was our own self-indulgence and neglect which made us prone to illness. Because then somebody eats those desserts, right? And then is going to get fat. And then you say, oh, why am I fat? Why do I have heart disease? Right? Right? Oh God, why did you put me in the hospital? No, you didn't watch what you were eating. Most of our problems are our own faults, either for our physical or our mental health. He writes about stress. If Rambam was here today to see that about stress, he would be like, this world is really crazy. People are crazy.
I'm just curious what he'd say to the parents of sick children. I mean, this comes across as so just, I'm looking for the word.
Pompous.
No, not pompous, but utterly insensitive to human reality.
Right.
Forgive me. I know what's going to do when I die and I meet him up there. But I mean, really, you want to think all the people who are sick and tell them it's your fault?
No, I think he's saying most of the time. Surely there are people that's not their fault. I mean, everyone's going to.
Maybe not their fault, but if we spend $1 trillion on nuclear weapons, $1 trillion could probably cure cancer.
Right.
$1 trillion in 1 year. For all scientists, okay, fix the problem.
Right. Good.
Much more fun.
Trillion, just $1 trillion.
Nuclear weapons are so much more fun.
Yeah. Right. Put that money in public food assistance, and so public schools, they have healthier food, whatever.
But you're not responding to the question of why we're spending that money. We're spending that money because we're afraid of living into communism.
Right, but that's humans' fault. That's not God's fault.
That's third.
Okay. Thirdly, in our own short-sightedness, we harm one another, failing to see that by doing so, we weaken the structure of society, which will, in due course, be to our cost. Human suffering has 3 kinds of causes. The first one derives from the fact that man has a body. Everything physical is subject to change and decay, and hence to illness and death. It's built into the fact that you are human. This is a necessary property of matter. And to ask otherwise, to ask God to do the logically impossible. Second is the evil people cause one another. Rambam does say that's relatively rare, right? Most of the time, you walk down the street without a murderer running right in front of you, as happened to Mark last week, right? Right? But once in a while it happens. But usually, most people in the world, most days, are safe. Okay, although that is an evil, that's true.
Obviously, those not living in Brooklyn.
And the third most who still live here. The most common is the evil we do to ourselves, wanting the wrong things, living an unhealthy lifestyle, devoting our energies to the pursuit of superfluous wealth. The first kind of suffering is inevitable. Second, and third are not the fault of God. Maimonides caustically remarks that so pervasive is our tendency so perverse is our tendency to shift the blame to God. Rambam has some great one-liners, that some complaints can be translated as irritation that nature does not help every vicious man to achieve the satisfaction of his vice, so that his corrupt soul should reach the aim of his desires, though they are really without limit, right? How dare it be that I cannot, do everything that I want, and so people are upset. that even evil people can't get all the material desires that they want. God gives us two things, existence and freedom. Although existence brings suffering, is not itself an evil, rather is a precondition of anything good or bad. So you can really ask, would you rather that not have been born? Most people here have children, which means that you think it was a good thing that you're born and you want to pass that gift on to someone else, right? Otherwise, why'd you do that? Okay, it could be selfish reasons. All existence as such is good. Infinitely, the worst evil is not to exist. So we should be thankful we exist. Thus, God's gift is good, but he also gives us freedom from which all human evils stem. True, he might have made us with the capacity of only doing good, but then the whole religious enterprise would have been voided. God chose to give man the freedom to do good, and this logically entailed the possibility of his choosing evil. Freedom, like existence in itself, its misuse is what is bad, but once having given it, God never takes it back. He does not intervene to prevent the wicked doing what they plan. Okay, and that's also from the guide. Thus, for Maimonides, it is not necessary to aspire to a divine perspective to unravel the problem of evil. It is enough that we should be honest about ourselves. And here's the concluding section. Despite the weighty literature attempting to solve the problem, there remains a halachic insistence on not solving it, for there is a difference between reflection and action, between explaining and reducing it. Imam says, actually, you should not solve the problem of evil. It would be a bad thing to solve this problem. Okay, why? There is a danger of which Judaism is acutely conscious, that if we succeed in finding justice in pain, we thereby render it acceptable or even precious. There is a penetrating example of how the Talmud fights against such thinking in the long passage about sufferings of love. Yisurin shel ahava. Talmud says, if suffering happens before you, check your deeds. Right? Maybe there's something wrong. If you can't find anything wrong you did, maybe it's bitul Torah. You missed 5 minutes here and there waiting for a train, you weren't learning Torah. If you checked out your schedule and you can find that, then you know this is sufferings of love. God afflicts someone because he loves them to make them more humble, to bring them to a higher state, to purge them and give them better reward. Okay, what about the privations to which God's subjects rights, not because they have sinned, but in order to increase their reward in the world to come? The natural consequence of such a view is to rejoice in affliction, and indeed, it is a pious response. Yet, the passage concludes with several stories of Rabbi Chia, Rabbi fell ill, and Rabbi Yochanan went to visit him. He says, are your sufferings precious? Aren't you happy that you're suffering? All the good that you're going to get from this? And Rabbi Chia said, I don't want them. I don't want their reward. So he says, give me your hand. And he took his hand and his teacher healed him. Right? So the greatest sages would rather not suffer at all than have the suffering of Yisurin shel ahava. What can be cured is not precious. This is the necessary corollary to any explanation of suffering. We pronounce the Siduk Hadin, declaring God's justice only over loss that is irreparable. Right? Then after someone dies, then we say, okay, God is just. Despite the fact that we should say over evil, this too is good, we don't make the same blessing over evil as we do for good. We don't say about evil, Hatov HaMativ, great, I'm so happy that this happened. Even if we can foresee that what is bad now will definitely turn out for the best, we must still pronounce it evil. By coining as the blessing over evil the sentence, Dayan HaEmet, the rabbis legislate that we live with the paradox. It is just, but it is bad. In this way, they preserve the most difficult of all distinctions, to explain evil without denying that it is evil. Right? So someone is sick, we're going to pray till the moment, and only after it's inevitable, person passed, then you can't pray anymore. Then we say, all right, we'll accept it, even though we don't like it. So we don't say everything is good. We keep what's evil is evil in its category, even though we can't do anything about it after it's done. The halachic response to evil is of two kinds. The first is a prompting to be better. Even if it's not our fault that we did something, when something bad happens, say, maybe this can prompt me to do something to make teshuvah. We note above the rabbinic rule, if a man sees suffering, examine his conduct. And as for the individual, so for society, public fast, or or because of imminent tragedies, if there is no rain, if there's something happen, so we all fast, we all pray, and hopefully we'll all be better together. So it's a prompting impetus for good. The second, straightforwardly, is to eliminate it as far as is in our power. Thus, while someone who is ill may see his condition as a punishment, he may not refuse to seek medical help. If really it was all punishment, that you say, "Oh, God wanted me sick. Okay, I'm going to get my punishment." Right? If you, if you're in debt, so you're supposed to pay off your debt. You're not supposed to get out of it. You're in jail. Okay, so pay off, what you've done. And so, logically, which is say, if I'm sick, okay, I'm just not going to go to the doctor. When I'm done, Hashem will make me better. We don't say that. Nor would we accept poverty on the grounds that it creates opportunity for others to perform charity, as Christian writers have suggested. Right? In Jewish law, the highest charity is to make someone independent of charity. We wish there were no poor. It's not good for anyone to be poor.
Well, that thing that he's attributing to the Christian writers is Rabbi Akiva's answer to Tunas Rufus. Sheniske Anan, that we should merit with them. It's just really interesting you did that.
Right.
It sounds like it's against martyrdom, which is such a Christian concept. It's anti being a martyr.
Right.
Don't afflict yourself. Don't, it's not about that. Right. It doesn't work in our religion.
Right. Living a life of a monk, and not no marriage, no material things. That's not the ideal. Is to make yourself suffering is not good in and of itself. Okay, it's there to combat it. Good. So the halacha takes evil as a challenge, not as an immutable condition of evil, condition of life. The evil in our known natures is there to be overcome by strength of will. The evil in others is to be confronted by honest rebuke, by education and persuasion. The evils involved in our having a body, pain, hunger, poverty, disease, call forth our deepest reserves of creativity and the constructive development of medicine and technology. The fight against evil in all its forms is one of the motifs of the halacha. It is an essential Jewish vocation, a task through which we grow into full partnership with God in the work of creation. This ultimately seems to be the meaning of the Midrash. Now we guess all the way back to the beginning. A lot of speakers, when they, a lot of Dirashot, they'll bring a question in the beginning and then they never answer it because everybody forgets that they asked the question. You have to notice, look at the speaker. But Rabbi Sachs doesn't do that to us, right? He promises, he fills his promise. Abraham sees the world as a palace on fire. God tells him that he is the answer, he is the owner of the palace. Has this answer Abraham's question? Doesn't it make it even more insoluble? It does if it was intended as an answer, but it was not. It was intended as a command, an invitation by God to man, not to contemplate the fire, but to help put it out. So he says, on fire, anybody in charge here? And God says, I'm the owner, but I need your help, right? Come and join me in putting out the fire. And so if we deny that there is evil in the world by any of those other answers, either ones that are far to this way or far that way, that everything's random or that we have no free will, then you deny that there is evil in the world. God caused it. Maybe Christian scientists actually don't go to the doctor. It's okay, it's good, right? Suffering is good, evil is good, or it doesn't exist at all, right? No good person ever got punished. Well, no need to help anyone. But actually, keeping the question open, and actually this works with Rambam, by defining providence as the ability that God gave within human beings to overcome randomness and to better the world for ourselves, for each other. That is how God works in the world. He's asking us to be partners. So actually, in the end, free will and providence are not against each other, but work together. In fact, we have to use our free will in order to reveal God's providence in the world. Providence dependent on our free will. Let's end with another 2-minute clip from Rabbi Sachs. And
it's called Vayikra.
We can hear from his own words.
And you open a Sefer Torah, you will see the first word, Vayikra. The Aleph is written small. Now, what is that telling us? Well, it's telling us something extraordinary. There are 2 words in Hebrew which sound almost identical, but which are opposite in meaning. One is the word mikra, which means mere chance, superstition, happenstance, just happened. And the other is mikra, which means God is calling to us. There's nothing chance about this at all. It's God's call to us through providence, asking us to do something. And the only difference is mikra has an aleph and mikra has a hey. The difference in pronunciation between an aleph and a hey is almost inaudible. And just to emphasize the point, the Torah takes that aleph and makes it small, to remind you how small is the difference between seeing life as mere coincidence and seeing life as God's call. It's a small difference, but it's all the difference. And that is why, over the years, I have tried more and more as a daily discipline to look at the things that happen to me or to our community and ask, what is God asking of us through this happening? And I find that's an extraordinary way to live a life. So for instance, if a real bad thing happens to you, normally, that can derail you, it can throw you into a depression, who knows what. But when you don't do that, you say, hang on, this thing has happened to me for a reason. And that reason doesn't lie in the past, it lies in the future. God is asking me to take this and use it as a means to do that. Then I can survive even the worst catastrophe and never lose my faith or my hope. And that is a life-changing thing. So to give you an example, and this is really quite relevant, I was supposed this morning, while we are making this film, to be on a plane to London. Somehow there was an earthquake or a shifting of the tectonic plates or a volcano in Iceland, which sent all sorts of volcanic ash into the atmosphere, and all the planes are grounded and no one can get to London. And so here I am in New York, and I'm saying to myself, what does God want me to do in New York? And then I meet somebody called Mark Perlman, who, for the viewers out there, is the person you can't see, but the person I'm talking to at this moment. And he says, let's make a film together. And all of a sudden, I realize that this was not just mikra, coincidence. It's mikra, God telling me to use this moment, here, now, in these circumstances, to do something he needs me to do. Live your life that way. And my goodness, your life will be flooded with purpose and meaning in a way it could never be if all you see of history is, in the immortal words of Joseph Heller, a trash bag of random coincidences blown open in the wind. Life ain't like that, though it may look that way. Life is God's call to us.
Beautiful. So I don't think he's saying that earthquake happened so that he will be stuck and do this, but rather it's a response, right? Response to something happens. So what can we do? How can we solve it or take it as an opportunity? We don't know why Rabbi Sachs passed away younger, and he has so much more to offer. But I think we can take it as a calling to continue to learn from him, his readings of Rambam, the way he made Rambam relevant to our lives today, and continue to learn and enact that in our lives. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Where can we access that article?
Here you go. This is my course. Thank you.
I like that summary also, that hour.